You are not broke because you are weak. You are not behind because you are stupid. And you are not exhausted because you are doing too little. The worst part is almost the opposite. You may be tired because you have been doing too much of the wrong kind of work for too long, with the wrong mental rules, inside a game that rewards leverage more than effort and ownership more than obedience. That is the nerve this book hits in the first minute. It does not flatter you. It does not call you special. It does something more useful. It asks a brutal question that a lot of people avoid for years. Why are you still poor even though you work harder than others? Right under that, the subtitle lands like a second blow. The mindset that separates the rich from those who spend their whole life surviving. Not those who are lazy. Not those who never tried. Those who survive. Those who keep moving, keep solving, keep paying, keep recovering, keep telling themselves next month will feel different, and somehow next month arrives wearing the same stress in a slightly different outfit. That is why this fictional book feels sharp. It is not talking to people who never cared. It is talking to the person who has been caring too much for too long and quietly wonders why the reward never seems to match the effort. It is talking to the person who wakes up already negotiating with bills, messages, deadlines, renewals, rent, groceries, debt, transport, family pressure, and the low-level panic that comes from knowing a single unexpected expense can knock the whole week off balance. The book argues that the problem is not simply income. Income matters. Prices are higher. Housing pressure is heavier, and in 2026, even people with decent salaries can feel one bad month away from panic. But the book keeps pushing past that first explanation because it knows something uncomfortable. Two people can earn similar money and live in entirely different financial realities. One keeps spinning. One keeps building. One uses every raise to breathe for a week and then upgrades the cage. The other uses every raise to create distance between effort and survival. That difference is not luck alone. It is not talent alone. It is not some fake internet fantasy about secret morning rituals and expensive watches. The book says the real divide usually begins in patterns so ordinary that most people never notice them. What do you do when relief is available right now, but growth is available later? What do you do when you are bored? What do you do when you feel ashamed of what you do not understand? What do you do with the hour after work when your brain is tired but not dead? What do you do with extra money when nobody is forcing you to be intelligent? What do you do when your life becomes quiet enough for you to see your own habits clearly? One of the strongest ideas in the book is that hard work and wealth have never been the same thing, and in 2026, they are even further apart. Hard work can keep you fed. Hard work can make you respected. Hard work can make other people depend on you. But hard work by itself does not create leverage. And without leverage, your income stays tied to your body, your time, your attention, and your willingness to keep showing up no matter how you feel. If you stop, the machine stops. If you get sick, the flow slows down. If the company cuts you, the identity shakes. If the client leaves, the plan cracks. The book keeps returning to one contrast that changes everything. There is a life built on reaction, and there is a life built on design. Reaction mode looks normal because most people live there. You wake up into unfinished problems. You spend most of your energy handling things that are already urgent. You manage payments, reply to messages, clean up mistakes, calm stress, check the account, hope the number survives the week, and then buy small comforts to make the pressure feel human again. Nothing about that sounds dramatic. That is why it is dangerous. It feels practical. It feels responsible. It also traps millions of people in a cycle where every decision is made under pressure, and pressure makes bad thinking feel reasonable. Design mode begins when you stop asking how to survive the week and start asking what kind of system keeps forcing this same week to repeat. The book is relentless on this point. People often want a better month without building a better machine. They want less stress without changing the structure that creates it. They want more money without becoming more valuable in a market that pays for problems solved, outcomes produced, risk reduced, attention captured, systems improved, or assets controlled. They want relief while protecting every familiar habit that keeps them fragile. This book is not cruel about that. It understands why people cling to familiar habits. Familiar habits are emotionally cheap. They let you stay the same while pretending you are trying. You tell yourself you are responsible because you are busy. You tell yourself you are serious because you are tired. You tell yourself you deserve every purchase because you work hard. You tell yourself you do not have time to learn because life is demanding, while somehow giving 2.5 hours a day to feeds, clips, random takes, low-value notifications, background entertainment, and digital noise that leaves no skill behind when it is over. That part hits in 2026 because attention has become one of the most violently contested resources in modern life. The book treats attention like money, energy, and reputation all at once. It says attention is not just what you focus on. It is what your future gets built out of. Every day your attention is being purchased, rented, fragmented, trained, and exhausted by systems that profit when you stay reactive. Short-form content does not only steal time, it trains impatience. It reduces your tolerance for depth. It weakens your ability to stay with complex thought long enough to turn information into skill. And if your mind keeps needing novelty every 30 seconds, you become easier to entertain and harder to enrich. The book keeps separating what feels productive from what creates actual movement. Checking 10 finance apps is not wealth building. Listening to money podcasts while ignoring your spending pattern is not financial literacy. Talking about business ideas is not ownership. Saving every productivity tool video in 2026 does not mean you are building leverage. Watching someone else use AI to automate research, generate offers, edit content, analyze customer feedback, build workflows, or launch a digital product is not the same as using those tools to multiply your own output. Consumption often dresses itself as preparation because preparation feels noble and safer than exposure. That is another sharp theme. A lot of people are not poor because they refuse to work. They are poor because they are loyal to safe forms of effort and allergic to visible risk. They will work 10 extra hours for someone else before they spend 10 focused hours building a skill that could make them less replaceable. They will tolerate years of low leverage because that pain is familiar. But they avoid the temporary embarrassment of being a beginner in public, learning sales, learning distribution, learning technology, learning negotiation, learning pricing, learning how markets actually decide what your work is worth. The book says many lives stay small because the owner of that life prefers familiar discomfort over strategic discomfort. This is where the title becomes more than a provocation. Why are you still poor? Even though you work harder than others is not accusing you of laziness. It is accusing you of confusing strain with strategy. It is accusing the culture around you of praising visible sacrifice while hiding the machinery of wealth. Society notices the person who looks busy. It notices the worker who stays late, the freelancer who says yes to everything, the parent who never rests, the employee who solves emergencies, the person who keeps carrying everyone. But wealth is often built in places that do not look impressive day to day. Quiet systems, boring repetition, unsexy discipline, deep focus, asset accumulation, owning distribution, negotiating upside, learning tools that remove hours of manual effort, building something once and getting paid more than once. The book is especially strong when it explains why survival mode blocks intelligent financial behavior. When your nervous system is overloaded, your planning horizon shrinks. You start optimizing for immediate relief. Cheap dopamine becomes attractive. Fast delivery becomes attractive. Monthly subscriptions start leaking money because canceling them requires attention you no longer have. You buy convenience because you are mentally tired. Then you resent the bill because you are financially tired. Then you need more comfort because the resentment is exhausting. That loop is not random. It is a structure. The book keeps saying that many people do not have a money problem first. They have an overwhelm problem that becomes a money problem. That idea matters because it removes shame and adds responsibility. Shame is one of the quiet villains of the whole script. Shame keeps people ignorant. Shame tells adults they should already know how money works, how investing works, how taxes work, how pricing works, how to ask for more, how to read contracts, how to compare offers, how to stop buying approval, how to stop performing stability online. Because they feel late, they avoid learning. Because they avoid learning, they stay late. The book refuses that cycle. It says the marketplace does not care whether your lack of knowledge is understandable. It only cares whether you correct it. And in 2026, correction is more available than ever. That is what makes the excuse harder to defend. You can learn negotiation from real case breakdowns. You can practice writing, marketing, coding, design, analysis, editing, prompt systems, customer research, automation, product thinking, and sales frameworks online with low-cost tools. You can build portfolios without permission. You can test offers with tiny audiences. You can use AI to reduce the friction of starting. You can simulate clients, rehearse pitches, structure projects, draft proposals, compare niches, analyze markets, create training plans, and compress months of confusion into weeks of directed practice if you stay serious. The gap is no longer only between educated and uneducated. It is between people who use modern tools to increase capability and people who use modern tools only to escape boredom. It also refuses the childish fantasy that rich thinking is about acting rich. One of the most useful sections tears apart the obsession with appearance. A lot of financially stressed people spend enormous energy trying to look okay. Not wealthy, just okay. Polished enough, upgraded enough, online enough, presentable enough. The right phone on installments. The better clothes on credit. The car that keeps the image alive. The dinners that prove normality. The vacations that generate evidence. The apartment furniture that photographs better than the bank balance feels. The book says one of the most expensive addictions in modern life is the need to look like you are not under pressure. That pressure is magnified by social platforms where survival is edited out and consumption is framed as identity. You see 20-second clips of polished lives and forget that the camera never records cash flow strain, revolving debt, weak savings, dependency on unstable income, or the exhaustion of maintaining an image that earns no return. The book is not anti-pleasure and not anti-nice things. It is anti-confusion. It wants you to know whether your spending buys joy, utility, status anesthesia, or emotional camouflage. It asks a hard question. When you pay for something, are you improving your life or protecting a story about yourself? One of the boldest claims in the book is that discipline is not self-punishment. Discipline is a way of preventing your future from being auctioned off to your current mood. That sentence changes how the whole subject feels. The book does not present discipline as moral superiority. It presents it as economic protection. If your spending depends on how stressed you feel, you will leak money. If your focus depends on whether the task is exciting, you will stay average. If your learning depends on perfect motivation, you will never build rare skills. If your standards depend on the people around you, your environment will set your ceiling for you. This is where the book becomes psychologically sharp. It says, identity drives income more than most people realize. Not identity in the fake branded sense. Identity as the private standard of what kind of person you believe yourself to be. A person who sees himself as unlucky behaves differently from a person who sees himself as trainable. A person who sees herself as bad with money avoids numbers, avoids decisions, avoids ownership, and accidentally proves the identity. A person who believes they are capable of becoming financially literate tolerates confusion long enough to learn. The book is ruthless about self-description, because repeated self-description becomes repeated behavior. A powerful section explains the difference between being useful and being valuable. This sounds similar until you see the gap. Useful people are often busy. They help, fix, support, execute, assist, manage, carry, and rescue. Valuable people do something markets hate to lose. They bring judgment, speed, trust, distribution, specialized skill, ownership, results, or leverage that is hard to replace. Many people stay underpaid because they have built a life around being dependable instead of becoming economically difficult to ignore. Dependable is admired, rarely rewarded enough. The book says if your work disappears and almost nobody notices in the numbers, then your effort matters emotionally more than it matters economically. That is why the book tells readers to stop asking only how hard am I working and start asking what exactly is being paid for here. Are you being paid for time, compliance, proximity, or output? Are you being paid once or repeatedly? Are you solving a problem many people have or a problem only your current boss notices? Could technology replace the repetitive part of what you do? Could someone in another country do 80% of it cheaper? Could you use technology to move yourself up the value chain instead of waiting to be pushed down it? These are not cold questions. They are survival questions for 2026. The economy now punishes people who cling too long to low-leverage tasks while rewarding those who move toward combination value. The book talks a lot about skill stacking, but not in a trendy way. It does not say learn everything. It says combine enough high-value abilities that your profile becomes more useful than the average specialist and more effective than the average generalist. Writing plus marketing plus AI workflow design. Sales plus industry knowledge plus content. Coding plus customer empathy plus product judgment. Editing plus narrative sense plus distribution strategy. Design plus conversion thinking plus client communication. The future does not only belong to the smartest. It belongs to people who can connect capabilities into outcomes the market wants. The book also attacks the false safety of waiting for certainty. This may be one of its most liberating parts. A huge percentage of people never build anything meaningful because they keep trying to eliminate emotional risk before they take practical action. They want proof the offer will work before making the offer. They want confidence before practicing the skill. They want certainty before starting the project. They want a guarantee before becoming visible. They want the plan to feel calm before they move, not realizing that action is often what creates the calm. The book says wealth grows around repeated calculated decisions, not permanent certainty. Calculated decisions matter here. The book is careful not to romanticize reckless risk. It does not tell people to quit stable income blindly, throw money into hype, or imitate startup myths. It speaks about risk the way adults should. There is stupid risk, where ego wants excitement. There is frozen safety, where fear disguises itself as prudence. Then there is measured exposure, where you keep your base stable while expanding capacity on purpose. Learning a monetizable skill at night. Testing a service before resigning. Building a digital product after solving the same problem repeatedly. Creating content around a real expertise. Negotiating pay based on evidence. Moving spending down before taking a temporary income dip. Risk becomes intelligent when it is paired with preparation and clear downside management. That kind of thinking is rare because urgency destroys thought quality. The book returns to urgency again and again. Urgency makes everything louder than it is. It tricks you into thinking the immediate issue is the only issue. It creates fake importance around short-term fires and leaves no mental room for structural change. If you live in recurring urgency, you start treating planning like a luxury item. You stop thinking in quarters or years. You become someone who only manages impact, never direction. And a life without direction can still look hardworking from the outside while going almost nowhere underneath. This is where the contrast between the two invisible lifestyles becomes impossible to ignore. The first lifestyle is built around constant recovery. You work, then try to recover from work. You spend, then try to recover from spending. You overcommit, then try to recover your peace. You scroll because you are tired, then recover your focus later. You buy convenience because you are rushed, then recover financially next month. You say yes because you fear missing income, then recover your energy on the weekend. Your whole life becomes maintenance. The second lifestyle is quieter but more powerful. It protects attention before it is stolen. It controls recurring costs before they normalize. It learns before emergency forces learning. It builds before desperation demands results. It buys time back instead of constantly buying comfort. The book makes a brilliant distinction between relief and progress. Relief feels good now. Progress changes later. Relief is ordering the easy thing because the day was heavy. Progress is cooking what costs less even when you do not feel like it. Relief is another month of not opening the spreadsheet because you already know it will annoy you. Progress is opening it exactly because avoidance is expensive. Relief is spending your last free hour being entertained into numbness. Progress is using part of that hour to build something that future you can actually use. Relief is real. The book does not deny that. It simply says relief becomes dangerous when it becomes your default investment strategy for pain. Another section looks at time in a way most people never do. Poor thinking, the book says, often treats time as something to be filled, killed, survived, or escaped from. Wealth-building thinking treats time as a raw material that can be converted into capability, assets, systems, trust, and optionality. That does not mean every minute must become a productivity contest. It means you stop being casual with the only resource that can become almost anything if used with direction. In 2026, the tragedy is not only that people waste time, it is that many of them outsource the management of their time to algorithms designed by companies that profit from personal drift. When the book talks about money directly, it avoids fake formulas. It does not promise a perfect percentage, a magic budget, or a guaranteed path. It goes after behavior first. It says money obeys patterns of respect. Do you know where it goes? Do you keep some? Do you assign it work? Do you use it to reduce fragility? Do you use it to buy tools, time, or vanity? Do you expand your life every time income rises? Do you negotiate or just accept? Do you compare what things cost in money or in hours of your life? Do you build buffers or live on praise and momentum? These choices look small because they are repeated often. That is exactly why they reshape your future. There is a section on lifestyle inflation that feels brutally current. In 2026, many people earn more than they did 3 years ago and still feel poorer. Part of that is inflation, housing, and real pressure. Part of it is that every income increase gets instantly translated into a new standard instead of a stronger position. Better apartment, higher car payment, more app subscriptions, more delivery, more branded comfort, more premium versions of things that were once fine, more spending justified by the phrase, "I work hard." The book says if every raise immediately becomes a lifestyle update, then income growth can leave your financial freedom almost untouched. You end up earning more while remaining just as easy to scare. That line matters because freedom is one of the quiet obsessions of the book. Not freedom as an aesthetic, freedom as reduced dependency. Freedom as fewer situations where panic gets a vote. Freedom as being able to walk away from bad work, bad clients, manipulative environments, or desperate decisions because you built margin. Margin in money, margin in skill, margin in confidence earned through competence, margin in reputation, margin in systems, margin in network. The book says wealth is not primarily about luxury. It is about reducing the number of things that can force you to betray your long-term interests for short-term survival. That is why ownership matters so much here. Ownership of skills that travel, ownership of audiences, ownership of products, ownership of equity when possible, ownership of processes, ownership of intellectual property, ownership of digital assets, ownership of your own ability to reach people without begging gatekeepers every time. The book does not say everyone needs to become a founder with a giant company. It says everyone should think harder about what they own versus what they merely perform inside. If all of your effort makes someone else's machine stronger while leaving you replaceable, then hard work can keep enriching your role without ever securing your life. One of the most compelling passages explains why many high earners still stay trapped. This is important because the book refuses simplistic class stereotypes. Some people are not poor in appearance. They are poor in structure. High salary, weak reserves, strong income, no control. Good title, constant pressure. Expensive lifestyle, zero margin. Social proof, private anxiety. They look successful because the market pays them well for now. But because everything depends on staying on the treadmill, they are one burnout, one layoff, one health issue, one market shift, or one attention collapse away from fear. The book says a person can earn a lot and still think like survival never ended. Sometimes higher income just hides fragile thinking under more expensive habits. This is the kind of idea that makes the book feel emotionally intelligent rather than merely financial. It understands how much ego is tied to money. Money is never just money. It is status, fear, proof, guilt, memory, family conditioning, class signals, resentment, identity, and hidden competition. Many people are not just spending. They are trying to heal, trying to compensate, trying to belong, trying to quiet the feeling that they are behind. The book does not mock that. It just refuses to let emotional spending hide behind practical language forever. It says the marketplace does not care whether your purchase was driven by insecurity or necessity. The numbers still move. Another powerful section focuses on environment. Your environment trains your standards, your tempo, your excuses, and your emotional sense of what is normal. If everyone around you spends to decompress, avoids money conversations, complains without building, mocks ambition that is not instantly successful, distrusts learning after work, and treats strategic thinking as arrogance, then staying small feels socially safe. If everyone around you is reactive, your calm plan looks strange. If everyone around you is scattered, your focus looks intense. If everyone around you treats attention like trash, your boundaries look rude. The book says one reason people never change financially is because they keep returning to rooms that reward the identity they are trying to outgrow. It also speaks directly about calm, and this may be one of the deepest parts. Many people never become wealthy because they never become calm enough to think clearly. That sentence sounds simple, until you feel how true it is. If you are always overstimulated, emotionally hijacked, sleep-deprived, socially pressured, digitally interrupted, and financially tense, then even good advice lands in a crowded room. The book argues that strategic thought needs space, not luxury. Space. Minutes of honest review. Hours without constant input. The ability to sit with numbers, patterns, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and uncomfortable truths without immediately fleeing into entertainment or distraction. This is why the book does not separate money from nervous system management. It says many poor decisions are not made because people lack intelligence. They are made because people are physiologically overloaded. They are tired when they spend, embarrassed when they avoid, lonely when they oversubscribe, frustrated when they seek comfort, pressured when they agree too fast. People often imagine wealth building as a purely logical process. The book says logic matters, but state matters first. If your mind is constantly in emergency chemistry, it will keep reaching for immediate soothing even when long-term harm is obvious. That insight leads into one of the book's most practical mindset shifts. Stop treating rest as the opposite of ambition. Sometimes rest is what keeps ambition from becoming sloppy, reactive, and expensive. The book does not glorify burnout, because burnout makes people easy to manipulate. Burned-out workers accept weak terms. Burned-out freelancers underprice. Burned-out creators publish trash to stay visible. Burned-out professionals buy convenience at stupid margins. Burned-out thinkers stop thinking and start coping. Real recovery is not laziness. It is maintenance for decision quality. But the book is careful here too. There is a difference between recovery that restores you and avoidance that sedates you. One returns you stronger, the other returns you equally stuck. A memorable part of the script explains that wealthy thinking is often less emotional and more strategic, but not less human. Rich thinking does not mean becoming cold. It means refusing to let every feeling vote equally on important decisions. Fear is data, not command. Desire is real, not supreme. Embarrassment is uncomfortable, not fatal. Impulse is a visitor, not a manager. The book says one hidden advantage of financially strong people is not that they feel less emotion. It is that they have built systems that prevent emotion from rewriting the plan every week. Those systems can be simple. Automatic transfers before spending expands. Default investing in boring long-range vehicles when appropriate. Scheduled reviews. Spending caps on categories that tend to leak. Tool budgets tied to output. Learning blocks that happen before energy disappears. Clear criteria for major purchases. Rules for subscriptions. Rules for debt. Rules for what counts as business versus vanity. Rules are not prison bars here. They are the walls that stop your future from bleeding into randomness. People who resist all structure often call themselves spontaneous. The book gently points out that many of them are just expensive to be. Another modern theme the book handles well is the gap between earners and owners. This gap is becoming sharper because technology magnifies scale. A creator with a smart system can reach millions without a traditional gatekeeper. A tiny team can run a digital product that serves customers globally. A consultant can use AI and automation to deliver faster than a larger competitor. A software product can earn while the owner sleeps. A niche educator can turn expertise into courses, memberships, tools, community, or licensing. Meanwhile, many hardworking people remain trapped in linear exchange, where every extra euro still demands another piece of life. The book does not shame labor. It simply says labor without a path toward leverage is vulnerable in a world where scale compounds faster than effort. That is why it spends time on the difference between income and engines. Income is what comes in now. Engines are what can keep producing with reduced direct labor. The book invites the reader to ask a brutal question every few pages. Am I only earning, or am I building something that can earn with less dependence on my daily presence? Maybe that becomes a body of content tied to a real expertise. Maybe a repeatable service with templates and automation. Maybe a productized offer. Maybe a small audience that trusts your judgment. Maybe code. Maybe a design asset library. Maybe a research process others will pay for. Maybe a niche newsletter. Maybe a digital product. Maybe a partnership with equity. The form matters less than the principle. Stop being paid only for arrival. Start being paid for structure. The fictional book also goes after a myth that has damaged a lot of serious people. The myth is that if your intentions are good and your work ethic is strong, the market will eventually notice. Sometimes it does. Often it does not. Markets are not moral systems. They are systems of incentives, visibility, timing, positioning, demand, trust, and perceived value. Plenty of honorable people stay underpaid because they assume quality alone sells. Plenty of mediocre people do better because they understand distribution, offer design, and attention. The book does not tell you to become fake. It tells you to stop pretending that hidden talent automatically receives public reward. This is one place where the script speaks directly to creators in 2026. The old model of waiting to be discovered is weaker than ever. If you know something useful, can explain it clearly, and can build trust with an audience, you have a distribution path that many older generations never had. But that path only works if you stop consuming all your creative energy and start shipping. A lot of people say they want creator income, digital product income, consulting income, or independent income, but they stay trapped in perfectionism. They keep adjusting logos, ideas, tool stacks, posting schedules, and brand concepts because refinement feels like movement without the risk of judgment. The book says perfectionism is often fear wearing expensive clothes. It is equally sharp about freelancing. Freelancing looks free from a distance and often feels fragile up close. The book is not anti-freelance. It just warns that freelancing without positioning becomes self-employment on a treadmill. You have to learn client selection, pricing, scope control, lead generation, delivery standards, negotiation, and systems. Otherwise, you simply become an employee who also handles your own instability. The wealthy mindset here is not just work for yourself. It is build terms, build standards, build inbound demand, and reduce how often you must start from zero. Again, the book keeps pulling the reader back to the same principle. Freedom grows when chaos shrinks. There is a section on debt that avoids preaching and goes after psychology. The book says debt can be a tool, a trap, or a disguise. It is a tool when it increases productive capacity with controlled downside. It is a trap when it finances temporary identity relief and future pressure. It is a disguise when it lets you imitate a stronger life before you have built it. The problem is not just the payment, it is the mental tax. Debt narrows options. It changes negotiation power. It makes bad jobs harder to leave. It makes downturns harsher. It forces tomorrow to serve yesterday's impulse. That is why the book tells readers to respect psychological liquidity, not just cash liquidity. How much of your future attention is already promised away? One passage that lingers is about the stories families pass down around money. Some people inherit scarcity so deeply that any attempt to build feels unsafe. Some inherit suspicion toward wealth, so they sabotage themselves before crossing certain income levels. Some inherit silence, so nobody teaches them basic tools. Some inherit performance, where looking respectable matters more than actual reserves. The book handles this carefully. It does not blame parents or backgrounds in a cheap way. It simply says many adults are still obeying rules they never consciously chose. And if you never examine those rules, you may spend your whole life defending them with your behavior. That examination is part of what makes the book potentially mindset-changing for the viewer. It turns vague frustration into visible mechanisms. Suddenly you see that the problem is not just low pay or bad luck. It is the way urgency, identity, shame, environment, convenience, appearance, and emotional spending combine into a system that keeps effort from becoming wealth. And once a pattern becomes visible, it becomes harder to worship it. You may still struggle, you may still move slowly, but you stop calling the cage normal. The book never claims instant transformation. That is one reason it feels more credible than fake money content. It does not promise you a millionaire life in 6 weeks or effortless passive income by next month. It says something more mature. You can change your financial direction by changing the quality of your repeated decisions, the value of your capabilities, the structure of your spending, the clarity of your attention, and the degree of leverage in your work. Direction matters before speed. People want dramatic income jumps, but often the first real win is smaller and deeper. Less panic, more awareness, more control, more intention, fewer leaks, better questions. A skill that starts paying, an expense that stops owning you, a buffer that changes how you negotiate. That is how structure changes. At this point, if this kind of serious breakdown hits something real for you, press like on the video so the platform learns that people still want content that respects their brain. Not noise, not fake flexing, not recycled slogans. Just clear thinking about how money and behavior actually work in a modern life. The book then shifts into a harder truth. Most people are not under-earning only because employers are unfair. Markets are tough or costs are high. Those things matter. But many people are also under-earning because they have not become legible to value. They have not learned how to package what they know, signal what they solve, communicate outcomes, price based on impact, or position themselves where better opportunities can find them. They stay hidden inside effort. They know more than they show and do more than they convert. The book says invisible competence is emotionally satisfying but financially weak. A compelling part of the book focuses on long-term thinking. Rich thinking is not just about more money. It is about more time horizon. Poor thinking, especially under pressure, tends to ask what solves this week. Rich thinking asks what keeps solving next year. Poor thinking asks what makes me feel better now. Rich thinking asks what makes future me stronger. Poor thinking asks what is the cheapest option this second. Rich thinking asks what has the best total return over time, including maintenance, stress, durability, and opportunity cost. The book argues that your time horizon may be one of the clearest signals of whether you are building freedom or preserving survival. Opportunity cost comes up often, and the book makes it vivid. The cost of something is not only the price tag, it is what that choice prevents. Another weekend fully lost to mindless recovery might cost a potential client pipeline. Another year avoiding a difficult skill might cost a massive earnings upgrade. Another impulsive recurring expense might cost investment capital for a tool, a course, a certification, a content system, or runway for experimentation. Another month of keeping all your money in visible comfort might cost the chance to build invisible stability. The poor mindset, the book says, sees the immediate price. The wealth-building mindset sees the hidden trade. That leads into a section on thinking quality. The book insists that clear thinking is not a luxury skill for philosophers and executives. It is a practical survival advantage. If you can think clearly, you spend better, choose better, learn faster, negotiate stronger, and spot nonsense earlier. If you cannot, you are easier to manipulate by ads, urgency, trends, fear, and social pressure. The book almost treats confusion as a bill. Every unclear belief eventually creates a cost. Confusion about debt, confusion about pricing, confusion about work value, confusion about risk, confusion about how attention shapes outcomes. Clarify enough of your life and money starts moving differently because you stop paying hidden taxes in bad decisions. It also makes a powerful argument about usefulness in the age of AI. In a world where repetitive outputs are being automated fast, the market increasingly rewards people who can define problems well, make decisions, design systems, build trust, combine tools, and exercise judgment. If your value is only in doing repeatable tasks manually, pressure will keep rising. But if you become the person who knows when to use tools, how to guide them, how to check them, how to connect them to human needs, and how to turn speed into actual outcomes, your leverage expands. The book does not romanticize AI. It simply says refusal to adapt is not a personality trait. It is an economic choice with consequences. There is an especially sharp passage where the book says many people want the income of modern leverage without the behavior of modern leverage. They want creator upside without publishing consistently. They want digital product income without listening deeply to real problems. They want remote flexibility without self-management. They want online authority without years of useful output. They want AI-powered scale without learning how to think clearly enough to direct tools well. The book keeps stripping away fantasy and replacing it with structure. Not glamorous, just effective. And yet the script never becomes cold because it understands what viewers are actually feeling. Maybe you have done everything people told you. Got the job, worked extra, stayed reliable, tried to be careful, avoided obvious stupidity. Still felt like money vanished on contact. Still felt like one setback could erase months of effort. Still felt guilty spending and embarrassed not spending. Still felt like life kept asking for mature decisions while never fully teaching the rules. This book works because it looks at that experience and says, yes, your frustration makes sense. But sense is not enough. Something in your model has to change. The model change begins with seeing effort differently. Effort is not bad. The book respects effort. It just refuses to worship raw effort disconnected from leverage. Effort should be used to build capability, credibility, systems, assets, and relationships that reduce future strain. If your effort only gets consumed by maintenance, then the book says you are feeding the present while starving the future. That is why it repeatedly asks what part of your work today will still matter 6 months from now. What part of your week created something reusable? What part of your spending created lasting utility? What part of your learning can become paid value? What part of your routine is helping tomorrow instead of merely surviving tonight? That question alone can reshape behavior. Suddenly, staying up late to polish a repeatable service offer looks different from staying up late answering low-value messages. Spending on a tool that saves 10 hours a month looks different from spending on status decoration. Studying sales or writing looks different from endlessly consuming general motivation. Building a small audience around a real expertise looks different from posting random noise for validation. The book keeps sharpening perception so the reader can tell the difference between activity that compounds and activity that evaporates. If you want the next video to go even deeper into that difference, drop the word leverage in the comments. Not for the algorithm trick. Do it as a marker for yourself. A reminder that from this point on, you want to think less like a person who only trades hours and more like a person who builds structures. The fictional author also spends time on negotiation, and this part feels especially important for hardworking viewers. Many people stay poor partly because they accept the emotional frame of others too easily. Employers, clients, relatives, peers, even friends can train you to feel guilty for asking what your work is worth, for setting boundaries, for charging properly, for declining low-value opportunities, for wanting terms that reflect impact rather than simple availability. The book says financially, Weak people often over-identify with being agreeable. They confuse kindness with chronic underpricing. But generosity without structure often becomes self-erasure. Another memorable idea is that money likes clarity, not morality, not wishful thinking, not vague ambition. Clarity, clear offers, clear priorities, clear numbers, clear standards, clear boundaries, clear use of time, clear understanding of what generates return and what generates temporary emotional fog. The book says one reason people feel financially lost is because they keep interacting with money in a blurred emotional state. They avoid the exact numbers. They avoid naming the leaks. They avoid deciding what matters most. They avoid the brutal calm of a clean plan. And blurred thinking creates blurred results. There is something almost therapeutic in how the book speaks about facing numbers. It says numbers are not insults. They are instructions. If the balance is ugly, hiding it does not improve it. If the spending pattern is embarrassing, avoidance only deepens it. If the income is too low, pretending you can budget your way out forever may become its own trap. Numbers can hurt, but they also remove fantasy. And once fantasy goes, energy can move toward correction. That may be one of the book's biggest gifts. It takes the shame out of looking directly. The script also explores the emotional cost of instability. Financial fragility is not only about not having enough. It is about how differently you move when the floor under you feels thin. You become less patient, less strategic, less generous, less selective. You tolerate nonsense longer. You overreact faster. You fear experiments. You sell yourself short for immediate certainty. The book says building stability is not boring adult admin. It is the work of giving your mind a less hostile place to think from. That is why emergency funds, buffers, and margin matter so much even if they are not exciting content. Stability may be the most underappreciated luxury in modern life. There is a section on standards that feels like a slap in the best way. You do not rise to what you want financially. You often settle into what you tolerate daily. Tolerated clutter, tolerated confusion, tolerated subscriptions, tolerated weak pricing, tolerated time waste, tolerated sleep loss, tolerated debt, tolerated low-quality work, tolerated people who interrupt your focus, tolerated environments that pull you into survival thinking. The book says improvement becomes possible when your standards stop being abstract ideals and start becoming normal behavior. Standards are the habits you protect, even when nobody is watching. This is also where the script gets practical without becoming mechanical. It suggests that the first wealthy move for many people is not increasing income tomorrow. It is reducing internal chaos enough to make higher-level action possible. Clean up recurring leaks, cut performative spending, restore sleep, track reality, protect a block of focused time. Learn one high-value skill with consistency. Use AI as a multiplier, not a toy. Build one small asset, study one market, improve one offer, save one buffer, create one decision rule. One stable improvement can change the emotional atmosphere of a whole month. And once the atmosphere changes, smarter moves become easier to sustain. That is another reason the book can shift mindset. It changes the story from why am I failing to what system am I reinforcing? That is a far more useful question. Failure sounds personal and final. Reinforcement sounds behavioral and adjustable. If you keep reinforcing short-term relief, scattered attention, appearance spending, weak negotiation, low-leverage work, and identity labels that excuse avoidance, the outcome should not surprise you. If you start reinforcing clarity, skill, restraint, ownership, long-term thinking, and technology-assisted leverage, the direction changes even before the numbers fully show it. One of the final major ideas in the book is that wealth is built as much through subtraction as addition. People love the addition side because it feels ambitious. More income, more clients, more skills, more tools, more opportunities, more projects. But subtraction is where many lives quietly transform. Less noise, less waste, less debt pressure, less image maintenance, less random consumption, less dependence on unstable praise, less time with people who normalize small thinking, less reactive spending, less friction in basic systems, less emotional leakage. The book says many people are one serious subtraction away from seeing their life clearly for the first time in years. And when clarity appears, something powerful happens. You stop admiring the wrong things. You stop envying polished instability. You stop confusing busyness with importance. You stop treating exhaustion like proof of virtue. You stop letting every desire negotiate equally with your future. You stop acting shocked that a reactive life keeps producing reactive results. You begin to respect boring strength, cash reserves, clean calendars, protected focus, skills with market demand, calm plans, flexible structures, owned assets, credible offers, thoughtful use of tools, relationships with adults who think in years. By this stage, the title lands differently. Why are you still poor? Even though you work harder than others no longer sounds like an insult. It sounds like an X-ray. It exposes the mistaken belief that effort automatically turns into wealth if it is sincere enough. The book has already shown that effort can be swallowed by poor structure, scattered attention, low leverage, weak identity, bad incentives, emotional spending, and the inability to think beyond immediate pressure. It has also shown that none of this is destiny. Difficult, yes. Slow sometimes, yes. But not fixed. The subtitle also grows more precise. The mindset that separates the rich from those who spend their whole life surviving is not about flashy confidence. It is about strategic calm. The rich mindset in this book is not loud. It does not scream abundance into a camera. It quietly asks better questions. How do I reduce fragility? How do I make this work reusable? How do I own more of what I create? How do I increase my market value faster than my lifestyle expands? How do I protect attention from theft? How do I make decisions that future me will thank me for, even if present me feels some discomfort? How do I stop living on reaction? That final question may be the center of the entire book. How do I stop living on reaction? Because reaction mode is expensive in every direction. It costs money, time, peace, sleep, confidence, and possibility. When you live in reaction, you are always slightly too late to yourself. The book wants to end that pattern. It wants the reader to see that a different life usually starts before the income breakthrough. It starts when attention becomes deliberate, when spending becomes conscious, when learning becomes applied, when technology becomes leverage, when identity becomes more disciplined, when emotions stop directing every purchase and every hour, when the future stops being treated like a random place you will somehow manage later. So what is this book really about? It is about the hidden rules that keep hardworking people financially stuck even while they keep doing what they were told was responsible. It is about why effort without leverage leads to exhaustion, why shame blocks learning, why urgency shrinks intelligence, why appearance drains ownership, why convenience can weaken ambition, why high earners can remain fragile, why tools create a wider gap when only some people use them strategically, why calm is a financial advantage, why discipline protects freedom, why identity shapes income, why the difference between surviving and building is often invisible from the outside until years have passed and two lives that looked similar become impossible to compare. It can change the viewer's mindset because it replaces moral confusion with structural understanding. It shows that being overworked does not automatically mean you are moving correctly. It shows that many common habits praised as normal are actually poverty habits with good public relations. It shows that the rich are not always the people who strain the most. Often they are the people who think further, protect focus harder, own more, automate more, negotiate better, and delay emotional gratification long enough to turn effort into engines. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it. And maybe the most liberating thing the book says is this: you do not need to become a different species of person to change financial direction. You do not need a fake personality transplant. You need new standards, new patterns, new uses of time, and a more honest relationship with reality. That is hard enough. But it is real. Real beats fantasy every time. Maybe you have been doing everything the hard way because nobody ever explained the real game to you. Maybe you were taught to be useful but not strategic. reliable but not leveraged, careful but not clear, hardworking but not wealthy. Maybe you have spent years proving your willingness to suffer while never learning how to make your effort compound. If that is true, this book does not ask you to feel bad about it. It asks you to stop repeating it. Look at your life with colder honesty and warmer responsibility. Where are you buying relief instead of progress? Where are you spending to perform stability? Where are you calling distraction recovery? Where are you protecting routines that keep you small? Where are you waiting for certainty as an excuse to avoid measured risk? Where are you letting shame keep you financially illiterate? Where are you underusing the tools of this era? Where are you trading hours when you could be building systems? Where are you treating exhaustion like evidence that the strategy must be right? None of those answers need to make you hopeless. They should make you dangerous in a better way. Dangerous to weak habits, dangerous to fake urgency, dangerous to low standards, dangerous to the story that you are doomed to spend your whole life surviving. The book insists that survival mode is not a personality. It is a condition. Conditions can change when the structure changes. And that is the closing impact of this fictional work. It leaves the viewer with an uncomfortable relief. Uncomfortable because it removes excuses that may have felt protective. Relief because it shows that the problem was never simply that you did not work enough. In many cases, you worked plenty. The deeper issue was that your effort was trapped inside habits and assumptions that prevented compounding. Once that becomes visible, a new kind of responsibility appears. Not the old, guilt-heavy responsibility of carrying everything for everyone. A cleaner one. Build differently. Think longer. Own more. Leak less. Learn faster. Protect your attention. Use the tools of your time. Stop decorating survival and start engineering freedom. If you stay with that message, the title becomes a turning point instead of a wound. Why are you still poor? Even though you work harder than others becomes the question that finally forces a better answer. Not because hard work is useless, because hard work without leverage, clarity, ownership, and strategic control gets eaten alive in the modern economy. And once you understand that, you stop begging effort to save you and start teaching effort where to go. Subscribe if you want more ideas that treat money, behavior, and modern life with this level of honesty. There is too much content designed to excite people and too little designed to sharpen them. This channel is for people who would rather become harder to fool than easier to impress. And when this video ends, do not just feel called out. Feel instructed. Open the numbers. Cut one leak. Protect 1 hour. Learn one skill that the market respects. Use one tool to multiply output instead of numbing attention. Build one asset. Delay one impulse. Ask one better question. Then repeat until the life that used to survive starts building something that can finally breathe. Because the line between poor and rich is not only drawn at the paycheck, it is drawn in attention, standards, emotional control, leverage, ownership, and whether your daily behavior is feeding a cage or constructing an exit.